Commander Lucy Grant stood at the observation deck of Orbital Station Meridian and watched the alien warship approach. The vessel was sleek and beautiful, moving through space with a grace that human ships could not match. It belonged to the Velphery, a species that had been traveling between stars for 5,000 years while humans were still learning to make fire. The Velphery had become allies with humanity 3 years ago, but not by choice. A terrible enemy called the Keswick Swarm had attacked both species, and they had been forced to work together to survive. The Velphery had never been happy about this arrangement. They considered humans to be primitive, young, and foolish. They tolerated humanity the way an adult might tolerate a small child playing with dangerous toys. Lucy had dealt with the Velphery many times before. She knew their pride, their coldness, and their absolute belief that they were better than every other species in the galaxy. She also knew that she needed them. The Velphery had technology that humanity desperately wanted, but they refused to share it. They saw no reason to give their secrets to creatures they considered barely civilized. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressurized air, and the Velphery delegation stepped onto the station. Lucy straightened her uniform and put on her most diplomatic smile. The Velphery were impressive to look at. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin that shifted to purple under certain lights. Each of them had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces, which allowed them to see things that humans could not even imagine. Their movements were precise and controlled, like soldiers who had trained for centuries. Leading the group was Lieutenant Cale Vorath. Lucy had read his file before his arrival. He was a decorated warrior who had fought in 17 campaigns against the Keswick Swarm. His uniform displayed symbols of his many victories, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never known true defeat. His 4 eyes scanned the station with barely hidden disapproval. "Commander Grant," Cale said. His voice had a deep, echoing quality that was common to his species. "We thank you for allowing us to resupply at your station." Lucy nodded politely. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant Vorath. We have prepared quarters for you and your team. I hope you will find everything satisfactory." Cale's 2 smaller eyes flickered slightly. Lucy had learned that this was a sign of mild contempt. The Velphery never bothered to hide their feelings about human facilities. "I am certain it will be adequate for our needs," Cale replied. His words were polite, but his tone made it clear that he expected very little from this primitive human station. Lucy kept her smile in place. She had learned long ago that showing irritation to the Velphery only made things worse. As the delegation was led to their quarters by station security, Petty Officer Danny Cole walked up beside Lucy. Danny was young, cheerful, and completely unafraid of the alien visitors. This made him either very brave or very foolish, and Lucy had never been sure which. "Do you think they will ever stop looking at us like we are insects?" Danny asked in a low voice. Lucy shook her head slowly. "They have had 5,000 years to develop their superiority. We have only been traveling in space for 200 years. To them, we are infants." Danny grinned. "Maybe we should show them something that will surprise them. Something they have not seen in all their 5,000 years of history." Lucy looked at him with curiosity. "What do you have in mind?" "The supply ship from Earth arrived yesterday," Danny said. "It brought real food. Fresh ingredients. Not the nutrient paste that we usually eat, and definitely not the gray cubes that the Velphery consume." Lucy considered this idea. She knew that the Velphery diet consisted entirely of carefully designed nutrient compounds. These compounds gave their bodies exactly what they needed, nothing more and nothing less. The Velphery did not understand the concept of enjoying food. To them, eating was a biological function, like breathing or sleeping. It was something they did to stay alive, not something they did for pleasure. A cultural exchange dinner, Lucy said slowly. That could be interesting. Or a complete disaster, Danny admitted. But at least it would not be boring. Lucy thought about the arrogant way Kale had looked at her station. She thought about the centuries of Velthary condescension toward humanity. And she thought about the fresh ingredients waiting in the kitchen. Talk to Chief Culinary Specialist Maria Vasquez, Lucy said. Tell her I want her to prepare something special for our guests. Something that will make an impression. Danny's grin grew wider. What kind of impression? The kind they will never forget. That evening, Lucy found herself walking through the station's corridors, thinking about the dinner that was being planned. Maria Vasquez was the best cook on the station, possibly the best in the entire sector. She had trained at culinary schools on Earth before joining the space service. And she treated food like an art form. The Velthary had no concept of culinary art. They had no concept of flavor, or texture, or the simple pleasure of a good meal. Their nutrient cubes provided perfect nutrition, but they tasted like nothing. The Velthary had evolved beyond the need for taste, or so they believed. Lucy wondered what would happen when creatures who had never experienced flavor suddenly encountered human cooking. Would they be disgusted? Confused? Indifferent? She stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. The Velthary warship hung in space beside the station, its elegant curves catching the light of distant suns. It was a reminder of how far humanity still had to go. The Velthary had faster ships, better weapons, and more advanced medicine. They had everything except the ability to enjoy a simple meal. Maybe that was not such a small thing after all. Lucy smiled to herself as she continued walking. Tomorrow evening, the Velthary would sit down to dinner with humans. They would experience something that their 5,000 years of civilization had never given them. They would experience flavor. And Lucy had a feeling that nothing would ever be quite the same after that. The next morning, Lucy found Lieutenant Kale Varoth in the station's command center. He was studying the human tactical displays with an expression that suggested he found them amusing. Like a professor watching a child attempt difficult mathematics. Lucy approached him with confidence she did not entirely feel. Lieutenant Varoth, I would like to invite you and your officers to join us for a meal this evening. Kale's 4 eyes turned toward her. His primary eyes, the larger ones, showed mild curiosity. His secondary eyes showed something closer to confusion. A meal? He repeated. You wish us to consume nutrients together. It is a human tradition, Lucy explained. We call it dinner. It is how we build relationships and discuss important matters. It is also how we enjoy ourselves. Enjoy? The word seemed strange to Kale, as if Lucy had spoken in a language he did not understand. Nutrient consumption is a biological function, Commander. There is nothing to enjoy about it. One consumes what the body requires, nothing more. Lucy had expected this response. That may be true for Velthary food, she said carefully. But human cuisine is different. I think you might find it educational. Kale was silent for a moment. His 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that Lucy could not read. She knew that the Velthary prided themselves on understanding other species, even the ones they considered inferior. To refuse this invitation would be to admit ignorance about human culture. For a Velthary officer, that would be unacceptable. Very well, Kale said at last. We will participate in this dinner. Lucy smiled. Excellent. We will begin at 7 o'clock station time. She walked away before Kale could change his mind, and immediately went to find Maria Vasquez in the kitchen. Maria was already hard at work. The kitchen was filled with smells that made Lucy's stomach growl with anticipation. Fresh bread was baking in the oven. Vegetables were being chopped on cutting boards. A large piece of meat was waiting to be cooked. How is the preparation going? Lucy asked. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. Everything is on schedule. I have planned 5 courses, starting simple and building to more complex flavors. If the Valkyrie have never tasted anything before, I do not want to overwhelm them immediately. That is probably wise, Lucy agreed. What are you making? We start with fresh bread and butter, then a tomato soup with cream. The main course will be grilled steak with roasted vegetables. And for dessert, chocolate mousse. Lucy felt her mouth water just hearing the description. The Valkyrie have no idea what they are about to experience. No, Maria agreed. They do not. That evening, the mess hall had been completely transformed. The usual plain tables had been covered with white cloths. Real plates and proper utensils had replaced the standard trays. Candles flickered in the center of each table, creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Danny Cole had volunteered to help with the decorations. He stood near the entrance, watching with barely contained excitement as the first human crew members took their seats. This is going to be interesting, he said to Lucy as she arrived. That is one word for it, Lucy replied. The Valkyrie delegation entered the mess hall at exactly 7 o'clock. They stopped immediately inside the door, their 4 eyes widening at the scene before them. Kale's nostrils flared. The Valkyrie had small nostril slits along their jawlines, and they were extremely sensitive to smell. The aroma of cooking food filled the entire room. What is that? One of Kale's subordinates asked. His voice carried a note of alarm, as if he suspected some kind of attack. That is dinner, Lucy said warmly. Please, sit down. The Valkyrie moved to their assigned table with obvious caution. They sat stiffly in their chairs, looking around at the human crew members who were already eating bread and talking cheerfully among themselves. Maria emerged from the kitchen, followed by her staff carrying covered dishes. She approached the Valkyrie table first, moving with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Lieutenant Vorath, Maria said, we have prepared a selection of dishes that represent human culinary traditions. With your permission, we will begin with something simple. She lifted the cover from the first dish, revealing a basket of fresh bread. The bread was still warm, and steam rose gently from its golden surface. Beside, it were small dishes of butter and olive oil. Kale stared at the bread with all 4 eyes. This is plant matter? Processed and heated? We call it bread, Maria said. It has been a staple of human diet for over 10,000 years. 10,000 years? Kale seemed surprised. And you still consume it? You have not developed more efficient alternatives? Maria smiled gently. Efficiency is not always the point, Lieutenant. Please, try it. Kale picked up a piece of bread with extreme care, as if he were handling a potentially dangerous object. He brought it to his nose, and his nostrils flared again at the smell. The aroma is very strong, he observed. That is the yeast and the wheat, Maria explained. The smell is part of the experience. Kale took a small bite. He chewed slowly and methodically, analyzing the texture with the same focus he might use during a tactical assessment. Then he stopped chewing. His 4 eyes went wide. All 4 of them, simultaneously. Lucy had never seen a Valkyrie do that before. What? Kale swallowed with difficulty. What is this? Just bread, Lieutenant. Kale looked at the remaining piece in his hand, as if it had suddenly become the most precious object in the universe. His hands were trembling slightly. I am experiencing. He struggled to find words. What is happening to me? Lucy leaned forward slightly. We call it taste, Lieutenant. And pleasure. Kale sat in stunned silence, holding the bread like a man who had just discovered that everything he knew about the universe was wrong, and the dinner had only just begun. The bread had been a revelation, but Maria Vasquez was only getting started. Kale finished his piece of bread in small, careful bites. Each bite seemed to affect him more than the last. His blue skin had shifted to a deeper purple, which Lucy suspected was the Velthary equivalent of blushing. His four eyes had not returned to their normal size. "Would you like more bread?" Maria asked. Kale looked at the basket with an expression that bordered on fear. "I am not certain I could survive more bread," he said quietly. "What you have given me has already changed my understanding of reality." Maria nodded as if this were a perfectly normal response. "Then perhaps we should move to the second course." She signaled to her staff, and they brought out bowls of tomato soup. The soup was a rich red color, smooth and steaming. A small amount of white cream had been swirled into the center of each bowl, creating a pattern that looked almost like art. "This is a soup made from tomatoes," Maria explained. "Tomatoes are a fruit that grows on Earth. We have added cream and herbs for additional flavor." Kale picked up his spoon with hands that were visibly trembling. He dipped the spoon into the soup and raised it slowly to his mouth. The other Velthary at the table watched him with expressions of concern, as if they expected him to collapse at any moment. The moment the soup touched his tongue, Kale's entire body shuddered. His eyes closed, and a sound escaped his throat that was somewhere between a gasp and a moan. His spoon clattered back into the bowl as his hands lost their strength. "Commander Grant," Kale said, his voice strained and unsteady, "I must ask you a question. Is this substance a form of intoxicant? A drug of some kind?" "It is tomatoes, cream, and herbs," Lucy replied. "Completely harmless." "Harmless?" Kale opened his eyes and stared at her with all four of them. "This is not harmless. This is the most powerful sensation I have ever experienced. My people have a word for this. We call it the overwhelming of the spirit." Lucy looked around the table at the other Velthary soldiers. They were all experiencing similar reactions. One of them had tears streaming from all four eyes. Lucy had not known that Velthary could cry. Another was gripping the edge of the table so hard that his knuckles had turned from blue to white. A third had pushed back from the table entirely and was breathing heavily, as if he had just finished running a great distance. "Perhaps we should slow down," Lucy suggested, suddenly worried that she had made a terrible mistake. "No." Kale's response was immediate and forceful. "You will not stop. I must understand this. I must experience everything you have prepared." His eyes burned with an intensity that was almost frightening. This was not the cold superior Velthary officer who had arrived at the station yesterday. This was something else entirely. Maria exchanged a concerned look with Lucy, but she nodded and continued with the meal. The main course arrived next. It was grilled steak, cooked to medium rare, with roasted vegetables and a dark red sauce made from wine. The aroma that rose from the plates was rich and complex, filling the entire mess hall. Several of the Velthary at the table made sounds of distress when they smelled the meat. Kale sat perfectly still, staring at the plate before him as if it were a weapon pointed at his chest. "This was once a living creature?" he asked. "A cow," Maria confirmed. "It was raised on Earth in a region called Kansas. The meat has been seasoned with salt, pepper, and herbs, then cooked over an open flame. You prepare your food with fire?" Kale seemed both horrified and fascinated by this information. "Fire is one of humanity's oldest tools," Lucy said. "We have been cooking with it for hundreds of thousands of years." Kale picked up his knife and fork. His movements were slow and deliberate, like a man approaching something he knew would change him forever. He cut into the steak and watched the juices flow onto the plate. He examined the pink interior of the meat, the dark crust on the outside, the way the light reflected off the moisture. Then he placed a piece of meat in his mouth. What happened next would become a legend on Station Meridian for years to come. Kale's body went completely rigid. His four eyes rolled back in his head until only white was visible. A sound emerged from deep in his chest, something that was not quite a moan and not quite a scream. It was a sound of pure, overwhelming sensation, of a mind being flooded with feelings it had never been designed to process. Then Lieutenant Kale Varath, decorated warrior of the Velthari Dominion, veteran of 17 military campaigns, fell sideways off his chair and collapsed onto the floor. "Medical team to the mess hall," Lucy shouted into her communicator. The other Velthari jumped up from their seats in alarm. Humans around the room rose from their tables, not sure whether to help or to run away. The situation had gone from cultural exchange to potential diplomatic crisis in a matter of seconds. But before anyone could reach him, Kale's hand shot up from where he lay on the floor. "I am not injured," he said. His voice was dreamlike, as if he were speaking from very far away. "I am not in pain. I am experiencing something else entirely. Something I do not have words for." His subordinate knelt beside him. "Lieutenant, what has happened to you? Have the humans poisoned you?" Kale laughed. Everyone in the room froze. Lucy had never heard a Velthari laugh before. She had not known they were capable of it. The sound was strange and musical, utterly unlike anything she had expected. "Poisoned?" Kale said between laughs. "No, they have not poisoned me. They have blessed me. They have shown me that in 5,000 years of civilization, we have been fools." He slowly pushed himself up from the floor, his movements unsteady but determined. His four eyes found the plate of steak still sitting on the table, and they fixed on it with an expression that could only be described as love. "We believe we were the superior species," Kale said softly. "We pitied humans for their primitive technology, their short lives, their emotional weakness. But we were blind. We could not see what was right in front of us." He pulled himself back into his chair and picked up his fork again. "You have discovered something that we never imagined possible," he said, looking directly at Lucy. "You have taken a simple biological function and transformed it into joy." And then he took another bite of steak. The diplomatic problems began within hours of the dinner. Kale had finished the steak. Then he had finished the vegetables. Then he had requested a second serving of everything, which Maria had happily provided. When the chocolate mousse arrived for dessert, Kale had eaten 3 portions and then sat in silence for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the empty dishes with tears streaming from his eyes. Eventually, the Velthari delegation had returned to their quarters. But by morning, everything had changed. Lucy was awakened by an urgent message from her security chief. There was a situation at the kitchen, and her presence was required immediately. She arrived to find 3 Velthari soldiers standing outside the kitchen door, blocking anyone from entering or leaving. Maria stood inside, looking confused and slightly frightened. Chief culinary specialist or not, she had never been at the center of an interstellar incident before. "What is going on here?" Lucy demanded. Sub-Lieutenant Dren, one of Kale's subordinates, stepped forward. His 4 eyes were wide and slightly wild, and he had the look of someone who had not slept at all. "Commander Grant," Dren said, "this is now a matter of cultural security. We must understand how these sensations are created. We must document the processes involved. Our people must know what we have discovered here." "It is just cooking," Maria said helplessly from inside the kitchen. "Just cooking." Dren laughed, and the sound was high and unsteady. "Yes, just cooking. Just as your weapons are just metal. Just as your ships are just vessels. You humans have a remarkable talent for describing extraordinary things as if they were ordinary." Lucy held up her hands in a calming gesture. "Sub-Lieutenant, I understand that last night's dinner was a significant experience for you and your colleagues. But I cannot allow you to occupy my kitchen. This is a human station, and we have protocols that must be followed." Before Dren could respond, Kale appeared at the end of the corridor. He walked toward them slowly, and Lucy noticed that he moved differently than before. The rigid military precision was gone. In its place was something softer, something almost relaxed. "Stand down, Dren," Kale said quietly. "The commander is correct. We cannot simply take what we want." Dren turned to face his superior officer. "But Lieutenant, you said yourself that this discovery changes everything. You said that our entire civilization has been missing something fundamental about existence." "I did say that," Kale agreed. "And I meant it. But that does not give us the right to behave like conquerors. If we want to learn from the humans, we must treat them as equals." The words hung in the air. Lucy was not sure she had heard correctly. A Valkyrie officer had just suggested treating humans as equals. Such a thing would have been unthinkable yesterday. "Lieutenant Vorath," Lucy said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss this in private." Kale nodded. "Yes, I believe we should." They walked together to Lucy's office, leaving the confused soldiers behind. Lucy closed the door and turned to face the Valkyrie officer. In the harsh light of her office, she could see that Kale looked exhausted but also strangely peaceful. "I have spent the entire night thinking," Kale said. "I have been unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I tasted that chocolate mousse again. I felt the texture of that bread. I remembered the warmth of that soup. I hope we have not caused you any harm," Lucy said. Kale shook his head. "You have not harmed me. You have awakened me. I have sent a detailed report to Valkyrie High Command, explaining everything that happened last night. I have recommended that all diplomatic and military relations with humanity be immediately reconsidered." Lucy felt her heart sink. "Reconsidered? In what way?" "I have recommended that we offer you technological and military concessions in exchange for culinary knowledge." There was a long silence. Lucy was not sure she had understood correctly. "You want to trade technology for recipes?" she asked. "Yes. The same technology that your people have refused to share with us for 3 years?" "Yes." Lucy sat down heavily in her chair. This was not what she had expected when she had planned a simple dinner party. "Lieutenant, I am not sure my government will believe this." "They will believe it," Kale said, "when they hear from my admiral." As if on cue, Lucy's communication console began to flash with an incoming priority message. The identity code showed that it was coming from the Valkyrie flagship, from Admiral Zorth himself. Lucy accepted the call, and the Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He was an old Valkyrie, his blue skin faded to a pale gray in places, his 4 eyes carrying the weight of centuries of experience. He had commanded fleets, conquered worlds, and watched civilizations rise and fall. "Commander Grant," the Admiral said, "I have received Lieutenant Vorth's report. Admiral, I want to assure you that we meant no offense." "Offense?" Admiral Zorth interrupted. "Commander, Lieutenant Vorath has transmitted a 40-page document describing what he calls human pleasure technology. He believes that your species has achieved something that we have failed to achieve in 5,000 years of civilization." He is referring to cooking. "Admiral, I understand that." The Admiral's voice was strange, almost hungry. "He has described something called chocolate mousse in great detail. He claims that the experience of consuming it was more profound than his first military victory. He says it was more meaningful than receiving his command commission." Lucy was not sure how to respond to this. "Commander Grant," Admiral Zorth continued, "I am officially requesting a cultural and culinary exchange program between the Valkyrie Dominion and the Human Federation. In return, we are prepared to offer significant technological assistance." "What kind of technological assistance?" "Faster than light drive improvements, medical advances, defensive systems." The Admiral paused. "Essentially, we are offering everything we have previously refused to share." Lucy's mind was racing. The Valkyrie, had always treated their technology as sacred, too precious to share with primitive species like humanity. And now they were offering it freely in exchange for something as simple as food. "I will need to consult with my government," Lucy said. "Of course." Admiral Zorth leaned closer to the screen, and his four eyes met hers with an intensity that was almost desperate. "But Commander, tell them to accept. And tell them that if they include a sample of this chocolate mousse with their response, negotiations will proceed very favorably indeed." The communication ended, and Lucy sat in stunned silence. Beside her, Kale smiled softly. "You see, Commander," he said, "your species has something that we want. Something we need. Something we have never even known we were missing." "And what is that?" Lucy asked. "Happiness," Kale said simply. "Pure, physical, undeniable happiness. You have found a way to create it and put it on a plate. That is worth more than any technology we possess." 1 year had passed since the dinner that changed the galaxy. Commander Lucy Grant stood on the observation deck of Station Meridian, looking out at a view that would have been impossible to imagine 12 months ago. A joint fleet of human and Velthari ships patrolled the sector together, their vessels flying in perfect formation. The sleek Velthari warships no longer seemed intimidating. They seemed like partners. The Velthari Human Culinary Exchange Program had become the most successful diplomatic initiative in the history of both species. Human restaurants had opened on 17 Velthari worlds, and the lines of customers stretched for miles. Some Velthari waited for days just to taste pizza for the first time. Others traveled across the galaxy specifically to experience ice cream. A new profession had emerged among the Velthari, the chef. Before contact with humanity, such a concept had not existed in their society. Food had been fuel, nothing more. Now, young Velthari were traveling to Earth to study at culinary schools, learning the ancient human arts of cooking and baking and creating dishes that brought joy. In exchange, humanity had received everything they had ever wanted from their alien allies. The new faster-than-light engines allowed human ships to cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. Velthari medical technology had cured diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Defensive systems that humans could never have developed on their own now protected every human colony, all because of dinner. Lieutenant Kale Vorath was no longer a lieutenant. He had been promoted to the position of ambassador, the first Velthari ever to hold such a title. His job was to manage the relationship between the two species, a relationship that had been completely transformed by his experience on Station Meridian. He walked onto the observation deck, then stood beside Lucy. They had become friends over the past year, something that would have been unthinkable before that fateful meal. "The fleet looks good," Kale said, watching the ships move through space. "It does," Lucy agreed. "A year ago, I never would have believed this was possible." "Neither would I." Kale was quiet for a moment, his four eyes reflecting the distant stars. "You know, there are still those among my people who cannot accept what has happened." "What do they say?" "They call it the Great Humiliation. They say that the mighty Velthari Dominion surrendered its dignity for pizza and ice cream. They say we showed weakness by admitting that humans had something we lacked." Lucy turned to look at him. "And what do you say to them?" Kale smiled. Over the past year, Lucy had grown accustomed to seeing Velthari smile. It no longer seemed strange. He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small container. Inside was a single chocolate truffle, carefully preserved. Lucy knew that Kale kept a personal supply of chocolates at all times, guarding them more carefully than any military secret. "I say that they have never tasted this," Kale said, holding up the truffle, "and that their pride is not worth such deprivation." He ate the chocolate slowly, savoring every moment. His eyes closed, and a look of pure contentment spread across his face. After a year of eating human food, the experience still affected him just as powerfully as it had the first time. "Your people taught us something important, Commander," Cal said when he had finished. "For 5,000 years, we believed that transcendence came from discipline. We thought it came from conquest and military victory. We thought it came from suppressing our physical desires and focusing only on duty. And now? Now I know we were wrong." Cale looked at her with all four eyes, and there was warmth in his gaze that she had never seen from a Velthari before. Transcendence does not come from denying pleasure. It comes from embracing it. It comes from butter and garlic and that mysterious substance you call cheese. It comes from the willingness to find joy in simple things. Lucy laughed softly. "I am not sure that is what philosophers meant by transcendence. Then your philosophers have not tasted Maria's lasagna." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The universe seemed different now. Warmer, somehow. More hopeful. "The Keswick swarm is still out there," Lucy said after a while. "They will attack again eventually." "Yes," Cale agreed. "But now we will face them together. Not as reluctant allies who barely tolerate each other. As true friends." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I will tell you something, Commander. Something I would not say to anyone else." "What is that?" "I believe we will win. Not because of our ships or our weapons or our tactical superiority. We will win because your species shown the galaxy that there is something worth fighting for beyond mere survival." "And what is that?" Cale smiled again, and this time the smile reached all four of his eyes. "Dessert," he said. "There is always dessert." Lucy laughed, and Cale laughed with her, and the sound echoed across the observation deck. Outside, the joint fleet continued its patrol, human and Velthari ships flying side by side into the endless darkness of space. The war with the Keswick swarm would come. There would be battles and losses and difficult times ahead. But for now, in this moment, there was peace and friendship and the shared understanding that the universe was a better place. When different species learned from each other. And somewhere in the station's kitchen, Maria Vasquez was already preparing tomorrow's menu, creating new dishes that would bring joy to humans and aliens alike. The galaxy had been changed by a simple meal, and it would never be the same again.